Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. The topic today is to look at what's missing from your facility management software. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the Editor-in-Chief of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar today is presented by ARC Facilities. Before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. Please note the control panel on your screen. This is where you can submit questions via the question box in that panel. You can send your questions in at any time, and they will be addressed after the presentation by our speakers. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of your control panel. Clicking on that will either expand or collapse the control panel, so please be sure it is expanded so you can access the question box. Also, if at any time you experience a technical difficulty, please send a message to us in that question section and someone on our team will answer you privately. Now I'd like to introduce your presenters for today. Facilitating the conversation is Suri Yakumar. He's the CEO of ARC Facilities. And in the last 10 plus years, Suri has led ARC to invest in technology to become a leader in access to information in facilities for the built space. And under his leadership, ARC has developed advanced search, OCR, and auto hyperlinking tools for large and small format documents in the facility space. Suri is a frequent speaker and an author of various articles and papers in the space of instant access to building information and documents. Your panelists today are Dennis Ford and David Trask. Dennis oversees corporate support services, plant operations, and management at Atrium Health, and he served in healthcare facilities engineering for more than 25 years. Dennis received his degree in civil engineering, completed the Air Force ROTC program, and started his career at Eglin AFB Regional Hospital. And while in the Air Force, Dennis served in facility management roles and at headquarters where he led the development of a CMMS currently used at all military hospitals. Before arriving at Atrium Health in Charlotte, North Carolina, Dennis served in various director-level facility management roles at several multi-campus hospitals, and he's a fellow member of the American Society for Healthcare Engineering, ASHE. You'll also hear from David Trask. He's the National Director at ARC Facilities and works with hundreds of customers across the U.S. handling implementations and advising facilities teams on productivity tools to lower costs and mitigate risk for them. He's a frequent industry speaker and a member of the IFMA Education Committee. So we're looking forward to a good presentation today, and also, again, welcome your questions toward the end. Now I'll hand it over to Suri. Hi, Suri.
Hi, Ann. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Good morning, everybody. Let's kick this off. So what we're going to talk about today, as Ann said, are the challenges of purchasing technology solutions for facilities management in large organizations. So there are three aspects we want to talk about. Number one, solutions may vary from a simple work order management system, or a CMMS, or a small version of a CMMS, to a complex and integrated system such as an IWMS or an IBMS system. As you know, depending on the size of the organization and the complexity of the operations, these softwares vary extensively. The second point being, the pricing itself will vary extensively depending on the software selected. You can have a fully integrated system which connects everything and it's just one place to go, or you could have a simple work order management system which will be a single unit, smaller software solution. The third one, we have often come across as an organization whenever we visited our facilities customers, is that companies, spend tremendous amount of money, invest a tremendous amount of money on facilities management software, but they all seem to complain about one thing: the software is complex and difficult to use. As a result, more often than not, we find any type of software they purchased is severely underused. So these are the three elements we bump into all the time. So Dennis, you've done this for a long time. What's your perspective on this? I mean, is this, are these in line with your kind of observations?
Oh, Suri, thanks for having me on this webinar today. Yes, I mean, there are so many different solutions out there right now. And I've been through multiple organizations. And normally what we'll be asked to do is evaluate current software. So there may be software in the organization somewhere that might do what we want it to do, and we have to evaluate that. And that's always difficult because it puts us in a position of looking what other people are using and trying to make it fit what we need, but not always being successful. And then I've been in organizations that want to put it all under one platform. And you mentioned that the integrated business management software system, my goodness, that's so big and touches so many aspects of a business. Facility management typically gets lost in that. So it's difficult for us to look at different software solutions and come up with one that actually works specifically for our needs.
Thanks, Dennis. David, now you often go to companies, help them install this software, often interview people in your line of work. What are your observations in this regard?
No, Dennis absolutely touched on it. And so many different solutions, so many different types of solutions that clients are using. But then you go and you ask the field personnel, the folks who are out in the field fixing the stuff that's breaking in the building and maintaining the stuff that's in the building. And what it really comes down to also is if it's not easy, they don't use it. And also, if they don't have that remote access, these guys aren't sitting at a desk every day. These guys are running around all the time. So again, if it's not easy for folks to access it, they're not going to use it in the first place. So again, a lot of these complex systems, require you to be sitting and parked at a desk somewhere. And that's not the world that most facilities folks live in. They're on the move from the time they get their first cup of coffee in the morning. So again, it's really, it has to be, the systems have to be evaluated from how the ease of use is for the folks in the field as well.
Thank you, David. Okay, so there is another challenge for the people who purchase this. Understanding the return on investment on all these solutions. That is critical for executives who are fiscally responsible, whether you are a COO, CFO, or a senior director in a facility, whoever you might be. The challenge is not only examining this software, do you really get the return on investment is a big challenge. So that we'll like to examine that a little bit. So in that regard, let's take a look at the types of facilities management solutions which are out. When I say types, I'm referring to categories. Based on our experience, they can be put in 3 different categories. The first one is what I would refer to as smart building software. This is primarily related to all of the, controls related to heating, air conditioning, lighting, ventilation, security, entry access. Almost all of the new buildings are starting to use this. These are relatively inexpensive. Of course, it can get very complex as well, but fundamentally involves a lot of IoTs and wide area sensor networks, what are referred to as WSNs, which basically senses the movement, people, heating, air conditioning, lighting, and gives us information so we can be smart about how we are managing our energy. So there's a group of software there which has been developed in the last 10 years, which is becoming more and more sophisticated. The second category of software, which we bump into often, is the computer managed maintenance software. This is used largely for maintenance management of the workforces, maintenance. So they can either be a simple CMMS or a pretty complex CMMS, or like Dennis said, it could be integrated work management system, which would be really, really a big system. So fundamentally, these addresses maintenance management, work order management, space management, could be asset management, it could be lease management. You could have all of them together in one package, which could be a very expensive software category, or you could just have work order and asset management. So depending on the type of companies which are offering, this is another category of companies. About 180 different companies offer this category of software. The third one, which is commonly seen, is the building management systems, which are commonly referred to as BMS, BAS, or the integrated version of that could be IBMS. This basically controls and manages mechanical, electrical, power, ventilation systems, largely installed in the control room in the building. These are suppliers, mostly hardware related to suppliers like Honeywell or Johnson Controls or Tridium Niagara, all kinds of controllers, which manage the fundamentals of the building, such as mechanical, electrical, and power and ventilation systems. So these are the three common types of software. Dennis, what's your perspective on this? Would you agree that on these three categories of software, Dennis?
Oh yeah, Suri. We use all different types of software in our organization right now. But when you get into these complex systems, you need system administrators, software support agreements to help keep them going. They need a lot of customization to meet your needs. And that's why we typically end up using different software for different functions. So we have capital planning and project management software. We have our work order management software. Space management is in a separate system. And then we have multiple building automation systems. Even our planning, design, and construction folks use different types of software to include BIM. And we've never really been successful in getting any information out of BIM, which you would think with all that information there, we'd be able to leverage it. But that's just not our experience right now.
Interesting. David, what is the category of software you commonly run into in your line of work? And what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, most of them obviously are CMMSs. Everybody's got some form of a CMMS, work order systems, and they do it for controlling PMs and things like that. The challenge with those is often there's gaps in all of these systems that aren't filled. So that's why you see people that have multiple different systems. Like for instance, CMMSs will tell you when it's time to go do something, fix something, do a PM on something, but it doesn't necessarily tell you where it is or how to do it. To Dennis's point with regards to BIM, I can't tell you how many clients I've talked to that receive a BIM model at the end of a project, and now they've got to figure out, okay, great, I've got this BIM model on a brand new building, but now I don't have anybody who can update it. And two, BIM also doesn't help on existing buildings because you don't have BIM models on your 50-year-old buildings. So again, what I see is there's a lot of gaps in systems, and you're thirsty to fill those gaps so that their teams can be more efficient. But again, like Dennis said, a lot of these require you to hire a team of people. I talked to one hospital group that they actually hired 14 people just to manage their BIM process. 14 hired staff. That's crazy. It shouldn't be that difficult.
Interesting, very, very interesting, David, perspective. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious that in large, organizations, you spend a lot of money, invest a lot of money in this building software management or, maintenance management. In general, in facility management, we seem to spend a significant amount of money to, manage the various aspects of it. But here's the point. Despite all these investments in technology, one of the things we see when we go to large commercial complexes is these, and I want to show those pictures to the audience. I'm sure you'll relate to that. Whenever we go to a large building, this is a very common sight. We see documents, building plans and building documents and information stored in paper format. Statistics show 65% of these building plans are actually still stored in paper format. And for the few who have decided to computerize, it's sitting in some server in this form where you have files and folders, hundreds of them, and the drawings are buried in those computers. One of the most common sites we see is this, where people have a mix of this. They have paper, they have CD drives, CD-ROMs, and then they have thumb drives, they have folders, they have drawings which are folded. It's a little of everything. So it's very interesting. In this day and age, whether you are talking about a hospital where you could have state-of-the-art space-age technology for healthcare, or you go to a computer company or go to a technology company, where some of the biggest technology giants in the world, you go to the building they occupy and find out where the building plans are. It's amazing. This is what you get. It's a stunning reality, really. And, this is something we bump into all the time. Why is that this aspect of facilities management still continues to remain on paper and kind of make it difficult to access when you want the information? So, Dennis, again, your perspective, would you agree this is what you see, or have you seen anything different at all, Dennis?
Siri, this is exactly what I see in all the facilities I've been at, and it is a mix. As much as we try to solve this, it still remains this way. Our technicians are very comfortable and used to working with paper drawings. Our design projects are coming in these BIM models, and then when we get our closeout document, they provide us thumb drives with PDFs that are thousands of pages long and have no intelligence to them. We put them in some sort of folder format that nobody knows how to search to find the files. And I think, honestly, sometimes our technicians pride themselves in knowing exactly where that paper drawing is, and they can go find it when some of us can't. I'd rather have it at the tip of my fingers. What we really need is building documents that are on the go for our guys to access them in the field. I had a situation not too long ago where I had an emergency electrical outage due to a transformer that I needed to shut down. And I'm asking my guys to help me understand what's all affected. And even though they knew where the paper drawings were, they really couldn't tell me what was affected by it. And even when I brought in the engineer, he wasn't able to help me. So we really do need a different solution for this, Siri. Help us out, please.
So that's very interesting. I had an exchange with one of my customers, and I asked him, you store all these drawings, and why haven't you digitized them? He said, what good is that for us? I still have to find the drawing, and when I find the drawing, I have to read the drawing anyway. So I thought that was interesting. He said that. He said, look, so now I had to search for a drawing in a place where I don't see anything, meaning, it's, you open a folder and then you have to navigate your way through the folder, which he thought was harder than reaching out into pigeonhole number 6 and pulling out the mechanicals. Very, very interesting. David, what are your thoughts on this one? I mean, you bump into customer sites all the time. In fact, I think as I'm talking to you, you're in a customer site.
I am. Yeah. I mean, you see this everywhere we go. I mean, to Dennis's point, this is the recurring nightmare that I see everywhere. You've got, paper drawings someplace. You've got digital drawings someplace. You've got, then they ask themselves, well, who can access this stuff? Like Dennis said, you've got guys that are really comfortable with going into that cubby there and grabbing that roll of drawings, but which roll of drawings do I need? Is it the one that looks like it's a brand new roll, or is it the one that's shredded because it's the original drawings? That's part of the problem, is which drawings are what. And you've got all this legacy information that's just all over the place. And to your point, Suri, with regards to the digital files, I hear it all the time where we scanned some stuff in, whether it was in-house or we outsourced it, we dumped it into these folders, and somebody accidentally deleted them, or they're just a mess because they weren't named right. So again, it's just because it's digital doesn't necessarily mean that they can find it any faster than going and looking in those drawings, unless it's got some intelligence behind it.
Right, totally. David, the last time we spoke in a presentation, you also talked about a interesting story about the dumpster in that corner of that picture here. Share that story with our audience, please. I thought that's
Yeah, you can't make some of this stuff up, but I was in a client's office, and it was very similar to what you see here, but when Suri showed me this picture and I saw the waste bin in the bottom left-hand corner, that gray bin there, it reminds me of a client that I was working with in the Pacific Northwest, that they were moving their plan room, and they planned on doing it over the weekend. So they did. They were in process of to transport the plans from one room to the other room. They were sticking them into these bins Well, they left for the day, not realizing the janitorial staff came in that night and dumped every one of those drawing sets that they had in those bins into the dumpster. The vice president of facilities was in the dumpster pulling drawings out in the rain. I mean, that's the problem with paper. I mean, it's a mess, you know, and I could just picture it as he's annoyed talking to me about this, telling me that that's what he had to do. I mean, it's the VP of facilities, for goodness sake.
Interesting, very interesting. I thought you should share that story with the audience, David. Thank you for that. So having information like this in this format actually can lead to three significant issues. They become apparent to us every time we talk to customers. Number one, as I said, 65% of the building owners still hold plans and building information in hard copy. So which simply means the simple truth is it's hard to access that information when you want it. It is not easy to access that information. Like David said, it could be, which is the document you pull out? I mean, you're really talking about taking out a roll of drawing, spreading it out, going to drawing number 18, pulling it out, and then trying to identify the shut-off valve, whatever that might be, whatever you're looking for. The accessing that information becomes hard. So that's time consuming. The second part of that is, this is a very interesting fact that 1 in 3 commercial buildings in the United States are over 50 years old. Think about it for a second. 1 in 3 buildings we have in the commercial space is over 50 years old. And 72% of those buildings are over 20 years old, right? And as buildings age, the problem never goes away. It gets aggravated. Because every year you could have tenant improvements, you could have code improvements, you could have different use cases. There might be a different tenant now who wants certain changes made. So changes are constant literally in every building, especially in professional services spaces like a healthcare facility. I mean, changes always occurring, which means there are additional documents. And all those have to be stored and preserved for the maintenance managers or facilities professionals to conduct their business. I mean, again, think about it for a second. When the IRS tells us that we have to store financial information for 7 years, I mean, people gasp saying that, oh my God, that long? I mean, think about a building. It could be 50, 60, 70 years old, and all these documents and information have to be preserved. And the facility managers have to access these documents sometime or other for some reason or other. So it only the problem gets aggravated. The third aspect of this is that people who work in the facilities for a long time, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they get to know where these documents are by memory because they've been doing this 10, 15, 20 years. So they know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. So imagine if they were not there at the time you needed the document for an emergency. If there is a water leak, or if there is a gas leak, or there is an explosion, you can't find that information. What if they were in quarantine? What if they were on vacation? Even worse, what if they're going to retire? That's a problem which is starting to haunt the facility space because a large majority of the facilities managers are actually baby boomers. So there are 3 big factors which play into this and become a very, very apparent that this needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it's going to, sooner or later create a crisis in the buildings we manage. Dennis, what are your thoughts on these 3 points? Any comments on those?
Yes, Siri. I agree with all 3, but the last one is the one that worries me the most because I think it's also the one that keeps us from doing something today. I mean, we do have these guys that we depend on. We know who to call in a pinch, and we know that they're going to have the right information or be able to find it. But without them, again, that example I had of the electrical emergency, my senior electrical technician was on vacation, and I'm calling him while he's on a family vacation to help me find the drawings I needed, and his staff wasn't able to find what I needed to make a decision based on. And it was very concerning. Without that one person there, everything fell apart. And, but again, it just seems like every time we go through a regulatory survey or somebody asks a question, we've always got the right answer because we know the right people who have the right stuff. That's not going to be acceptable because those guys are leaving. Our entire workforce is over 50 years old. So we can't keep hanging on to this just because these guys are around. We've got to have a solution for when they are gone.
Wow, interesting. Yes, I mean, obviously this is something that it comes across. David, any quick thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, and again, to Dennis's point, I mean, the legacy folks that you've got on staff, I mean, I always joke that, everybody's got a guy named Carl. Carl's the guy who's been on staff for 40 years and knows where everything is. But the buildings are changing, like you said, constantly. So it's just more documentation over and over for every TI, every renovation that's done on that building. It's just adding to the pile.
Totally. Okay, let's move on here. So here's another way to look at this. So if you think about the software solutions we invest in as facilities managers, we talked about the smart building software. That's a category in itself, right? Because it addresses all of the needs of occupancy people, saving electricity or power, and then security. It's all related to LEED certification and so on. So that in itself, that group of software can be in one category. Here's another category, which is basically we refer to as CMMS, which is always all about management of the work order, of the people, of the space, of the asset. It's all management software. Here's another category, which is the building management, right? I mean, fundamentally related to control and managing electrical, mechanical, power situation. But here's the question. What is there to manage the building plans and information management? I mean, do we really have a solution for that? I mean, that is actually a very key question. And so that's another way to think about it. Here's a category which has not been addressed. Something has not been done about that. We have developed software for smart building software. We have quite a bit of them. We have developed software for computer managed maintenance. We have developed software in this category for building management systems. But no one has really developed software for building plans and information management. And that's exactly why buildings continue to store information in hard copy format. So this is a critical problem because we know that if it is unaddressed, it is going to continue grow every year. It's just not going to, it's not a problem which is going to go away, but instead it's going to continue to grow. And here's the reason, as we discussed, for every new commercial building that is being constructed, there are 98 existing commercial buildings in the United States. That's what the statistics show. So basically, this problem is not going to go away. In fact, it's going to only get aggravated even more. So if we are to address the problem of instant access to building plans and information, what would it look like? That is something I really want to talk about. So as I said previously, we have a category of software for smart buildings. We also have a category of software for computer managed maintenance. Then we have a category of software for building management systems. So what if we have a category of software for building plans and information management? Because sooner or later, that needs to be addressed. And if we address that, develop software around that, then we could solve this problem we have been talking about. Dennis, your thoughts on this in terms of how the categories can be put together? What are your thoughts on that, Dennis?
Yes, Harry, I really appreciate the way that you're walking us through the different categories, because again, we try to force things to work for us, right? So whatever we have existing, we try to make work. So if we have a space management system, we have some sort of drawings in that, typically architectural drawings, but our systems seem to be lost in that. Our guys gravitate toward the paper drawings, so maybe we scan those in and we have these PDF files, but they're very difficult to manage and locate. So it really is a challenge. I hope you can come up with a good solution for us, because right now we're not doing too well.
David, your thoughts on, you previously mentioned how, you said something interesting. The facilities technicians and facilities maintenance people are actually people who are on the go. They're not sitting at their desk. I think that's an important point. They're moving around all the time. And you see them in action. That's exactly what you help them with. What are your thoughts on this, David?
It's a combination of what you said as well as what Dennis said too. Dennis said that, some of the drawings might be in one of these systems, but which system do I go to look for when I'm trying to find something on the fly? So like Dennis said, where do I go when I have that electrical outage? Which system is it in? And even more importantly, I've talked to folks that said, oh no, we manage our drawings in one of these other types of systems. And then I said, well, then why do you have a plan room? If that's working for you, why do you still have a plan room? So,
totally,
then you could see the light bulb go on that they realize, well, wait a minute, yeah, I do have a problem, and it's not fixing that.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point. That actually triggers another thought, David. The other day I was talking to a customer, and I find also customers, once they have this, because everybody is talking about cloud and everybody is talking about, hey, we could store documents in other places. So instead of having them in their own servers, which is what we showed in a picture previously, they're now starting to store all these documents in places like Dropbox or Box or storage companies which offer cloud services, which is very good. But the problem still remains. You still have to, log on and get to the drawings and be able to search for those drawings. So one of the interesting points is that access to critical building information on the go is the game changer for facilities professionals, like you were talking about, David. So when facilities professionals are moving around, whether in a campus or large building complexes, whether you are waiting on the 8th floor or 9th floor, you have a challenge or issue, you want information, you want data, you're trotting back to your desk. That's what's happening most of the time. So when you do that, that's sucking up the oxygen in your day, because you're basically spending all the time doing that. So if we find a way to deliver this information on the go, meaning while they're moving around on their mobile devices, that's a game changer. So studies show that, we've done a study on this. Studies show that facilities personnel spend up to 3 hours a day searching for information. That is what the studies show. Dennis, have you bumped into that at all? I thought I'd just stop and ask you
that. Siri, when this comes up, I get this vision in my mind of seeing these two maintenance technicians walking down the hallway, headed back to the office, and I ask them what they're up to. They're going to go research information, or they're going to go get some tools or supplies. But I think it's always funny because it's always pairs. Nobody goes by themselves. So when you talk about 3 hours a day, you've got a multiplier on this because everybody's got a buddy. With the work order management systems, we're really trying to push the guys to work in their areas. We've instituted what we call zone maintenance, and we really need them to stay in the facility, going from work to work and from customer to customer. We really want to minimize the amount of time they spend in our actual office. In fact, we probably shouldn't have an office for them anyway.
Yeah, right. That's true. I thought it's pretty interesting. It is true. Even when I go to facilities, they always have a buddy around with them, don't they? So that's an interesting point, Dennis. Okay, so there is a solution for that. Dennis, you talked about that. There is a way we can solve the problem, and we address that problem. And let's talk about that. So one way to solve that problem is to be able to deliver this building information on a mobile device, which means whenever they are moving around, wherever they are going, if we can find a way to deliver that information, that would be really the one we were talking about being a game changer. Advanced technology available today can help us overcome this issue. I mean, we definitely have technologies today. I wouldn't say we had such technologies 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but we sure have technology which can overcome these challenges. ARC has developed a groundbreaking solution for this. So I want to give you a snapshot of how the solution is configured. So the ARC facilities innovation has two critical components. The first component of that is basically using artificial intelligence and machine learning and advanced optical character recognition technologies. We developed a solution which can extract building intelligence from architectural, engineering, and construction plans. For our audience, you remember I talked about whether you have the building plans in hard copy format or whether you have it digitized. A facilities technician still has to take a drawing out, find the drawing, and then read the drawing to find out where the shut-off valve is or an electrical breaker is. What artificial intelligence can do here is it can extract that information out of the drawings without human intervention, which I think is huge. But having said that, now you have all that information. How do you deliver that to a facilities technician who is actually on the 8th floor standing in front of a generator? So that's where the current technologies of information being delivered through an app on a mobile device. As you know, the apps are becoming more and more powerful, especially with the introduction of 5G now. Your mobile devices are going to be super powerful and deliver some unbelievable amount of information. So complex information today can be delivered on a mobile device, however complex it might be, as long as you have the right interface, user interface. And, almost every technician has a mobile phone, and almost every one of us use apps. So this is a very convenient and easy way to deliver information. So instead of really talking more about the technology, which obviously we can talk in depth for who want to discuss, I can show you how this works in real life. So let's say you have a building and you want to have access to as-built. So what would you do if you had an app for that? Here's what you do. You'll go to your phone and tap on the app. And then, you'll go to the building and then you'll tap on the as-built. And then voila, there you have it. It's a swipe and maybe 4 taps. You have the as-built wherever you are. Or let's take the example of a technician standing in front of a generator. The generator is down and he wants to find more information about the generator. He doesn't have to go back to his desk. He can, from his mobile device, he can tap on the app, identify the backup generator, whatever that might be, or pick up the QR code, scan the QR code, and there it is. It will show you the information on the generator, the manufacturer, the person who installed it, is it under warranty or not? And if you could also list the telephone number of the servicing dealer. While standing there on the 8th floor, you can call the servicing dealer and say, I have a problem with the generator, or they are handler. And guess what? They might ask you a question. Hey, what's the serial number on that? And you could right away give it. You can tell him, you can ask that person, ask her, do you want me to text it or read it out to you? It could be that simple. Let's take another example. Let's say you want to find a shut-off valve and you're in an emergency. There's a pipe burst, there's an explosion, there's a gas leak. You go to the app, tap on the app, identify the location of the shut-off valve. First, of course, the campus and the shut-off valves. And then there are the shut-off valves. You tap on a shut-off valve, you literally have a picture of the shut-off valve. You could even have a video here showing how to shut off valve. Because remember, at this stage, your facilities technicians don't have to do this. If you have an emergency, a security guard can do this, or a front office manager can do this. It really doesn't have to be a facilities technician, because artificial intelligence has extracted that information and is delivering through an app. So now anybody can use that information. So I'll pause there. Dennis, feedback from you. What do you think?
Well, Siri, you packed a lot into one slide here. That is a lot of great information.
That's for sure.
I would like to share with the group that even though Siri walked through a slide presentation for this, I've seen this live, and it really is that fast. In fact, you mentioned 5G earlier. I find that hilarious because I just switched. I switched from an iPhone 6 to an iPhone 12, and I'm now on 5G, and it's so wonderful and it's so quick. And that's definitely the technology that you're talking about, and we're getting used to that, right? I mean, this is what we do in our day-to-day lives, so it makes it a lot easier for the guys to navigate. It's something they need to know anyway, how to use an app on a phone and be able to take that with them. That's what they do anyway. The other thing here, Siri, is really just a sharing of information. So many times I find myself as a director in an emergency situation and just not having the information. And yet the guy that's in the middle of it is the guy that has all the information, but I can't talk to him because he's fixing the problem. So here I have the ability to pull up that same information and data and start coordinating with my customers and letting them know what's going on, what my guys are doing, and what's being affected. And I think information is the key for me in my position, Siri.
Mm-hmm.
And completely agree. I agree. I mean, it's not only just for the facilities technicians, but it also could be for the people responsible at a higher level, be able to see the same information. David, you are always dealing with people who are dealing with this on a daily basis. What is your feedback on this, and what do you think the impact is going to be on those technicians who are running around every day with a clipboard and a hard hat?
Well, I can give you an example of today. I was on a roof with one of the facilities techs, and he was looking at an HVAC system on the roof, and I just had attached the QR code. He pulls his phone out. He didn't even have the app installed yet. Pulled his phone out, hit this camera icon, and scanned the QR code, and it went to the piece of equipment just exactly like you see in the middle screen right there. Okay, and then we installed the app, and now he can add filter sizes. He added belts. All of that stuff. I mean, you could literally see this guy light up. But normally what he would have to do is climb up that ladder like we did. He would have to go up to that unit, look and see what's on the side, and a Sharpie on the side of the unit says 2 filters that are whatever size, and then he'd have to climb back down that ladder, go back down to the facilities room, figure out if he's even got them, and then haul him back up that ladder. Now he can even look at it before he climbs up that ladder. He can click on the unit and see exactly what he needs before he even gets up there. I mean, that's a true game changer. These guys have smartphones in their pockets. Everybody does. And now he realized that there's a way that he could use this and just make his life easier.
Totally. I can see so many applications, and it's one thing to talk about it, David, but when you really are at site with these technicians, it's amazing how many different types of use you can get. So moving on here, we are coming up to the time. So the unique benefits to facilities professionals through instant access. This is what we would refer to as instant access, because really, this is truly, like Dennis said, this flies. I mean, you're really not talking about a few minutes. You're talking seconds. You are talking a swipe and a few tap, like any other app, like your weather app, or whether you're looking for directions, or whether you're searching Yelp for a restaurant, nearby restaurant. That's how it would work. So here are the benefits. Technicians will be significantly more efficient, prevent small accidents from becoming catastrophes. You have an accident, there's a water leak. Time and again, we hear that. By the time you find out where the shutoff valve is, it has become a catastrophe. It has flooded the whole floor. It has damaged, done hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damages. In many instances, it runs into millions of dollars. Make information available to first responders. If there's an emergency crew Anybody can find that information. Retain institutional knowledge. Now, once you have a system in place like this, let's say your facility manager retires, that shouldn't become a problem now because you have the ability to access all this information using a system so advanced that you don't necessarily depend on somebody who has been there for 30 or 40 years. And the young engineer, he or she who comes on board, all she has to do is just pull out the phone, swipe and a few taps, and there you are, you have the information. So it really becomes much more user friendly in terms of how we are using the information. And finally, one point I would add is consumerizing in this information. This simply means anyone can access it. A technician doesn't have to read the drawing. Somebody from the front office, somebody from the security guards of, security office, or an administrative person would be able to actually read this information. So that, is the one which will really make the difference. Here's one way I would look at it, and I would like to then get comments from David and Dennis. Checklist for investing in productivity enhancing software, particularly in this category, right? Before you buy, I would say use this checklist. It should be an easy user interface. If the interface is not easy, then it doesn't help. You're back to square one. It should not require any training because, you don't need training for any apps. Somebody might have to show you a few times if you are not very app friendly, but very quickly you should be able to learn that. You're talking minutes, not really months worth of training, because we see people getting trained on software for months. Delivers critical information on demand, whenever you want it, wherever you are, is accessible from a mobile device, whether it's from a phone or iPad. And the last part I would suggest is just avoid custom software, because one of the things I find with customers is that they always say, oh, this software is customized for us. That's a money pit, because every time you customize the software, it becomes very complex. And every time you want to update it, or you have a new device, now you are going back and updating it, and updating an old software, you're still on that old version. The good part about, Dennis, what you talked about, your new iPhone 12, is that software gets updated as devices get updated, right? And it's always the latest software, which is faster, quicker, easier. It adapts to now, instead of 3G and 4G, you probably had 3G before, not only adapts to 4G, but it'll adapt to 5G. And people have started talking about 6G. That's where we are headed to. So this is going to become faster and quicker, and having drawings in paper is definitely not the best way to go. I'll stop there. Quickly ask comments from Dennis and David. Dennis, what are your thoughts on this? Any other closing comments?
Yeah, no, again, Siri, I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this webinar. I've looked at a lot of different software solutions, and I am asked for my feedback many times, and there's a lot of things you can cover, and you've covered a lot of them. The bottom line for me is speed. I can't tell you how many times, even with desktop solutions, where my guys are saying it's just taking too long to get to that information, it's taking too long to pull it up. So I think speed is key, and as we get used to more advanced technology, our expectations are just going to rise. And you put on there about avoiding custom software. Well, a big part of that is, if we start customizing things for our specific solutions, then we begin maintaining it instead of the software provider. And that leads me to my another comment is, if you're going to buy software, let's buy it from a software provider who's used to developing it, enhancing it. You mentioned the iPhones. There's a whole bunch of software engineers that work on those behind the scenes to ensure that every time it's updated, that everything else moves with it. If you don't do that, then you're going to miss pieces and chunks. So a lot of times I have engineering companies that try to sell me software, and I say, look, unless you're a software company, I really don't want to talk to you about it. And then the fact that you guys from the building industry and the drawings, there's been so many people trying to fix this or solve the solution. And what you've done is you've taken the existing industry that everybody's used to and just enhanced it. We're not really turning it upside down. We're just making it intelligent and making it easy to to grab and access and get the information to the people that need it in the time that they need it. So I really like that, Siri. Thank you very much.
Great, Dennis. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, David, comments from you before I hand it over back to Ann?
Yeah, I mean, sir, you've clearly outlined here in this checklist. I mean, this is a clear, defined tool in their toolbox. This is like an Allen wrench. This is like a crescent wrench. You've defined a tool that these guys in the field can now use to make their lives easier, to help them be able to react faster when stuff goes sideways, and it always goes sideways. But also, like Dennis said, how many times do you see, folks climbing off the ladder, walking down the hallway, sitting in front of the computer, and they still can't find what it is they're looking for? It's a time suck. That's what it comes down to. What you're talking about here is giving people back time by putting a tool in their hands that they can actually use.
Yeah, I agree. It's time seems to be the biggest thing, and it's very interesting. Dennis said something before. We are getting spoiled, right? With all this technology being used, we are getting used to doing things faster and quicker. So I think it's very important to remember that that's going to be the norm as we go along. And how do you make sure the system actually steps up with that? Very good. So I'm going to now engage the audience in case they have any questions. And back to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Suri, and Dennis and David. Thanks for the conversation and for bringing up those points. And we'll get right into questions. Thank you, everyone, for sending in your questions. We do have some time here. So I'll just jump right into it. Let's talk about the solution you were just talking about, that you had kind of laid the groundwork with some of the issues that are facing facilities management today and ongoing. And the question is about implementation, basically introducing this ARC facility solution in, or something like it. What's the work involved with converting all this information into this application? I made a note about that too. What is the implementation process? And I would even ask, who might be involved in this process? What might be the timeline be, generally speaking? Can you just talk a little bit about, David, or I'm sorry, Dennis, it might have been you who even mentioned speed is an issue. So it sounds like this is something that could really get ramped up and help. So if you can talk about implementation, that would be great.
Sure, and thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's a question which gets constantly asked of us, because one of the things people are frightened is to touch that document storage room. There is so much information they have stored for decades. Only the facility manager knows that. They're scared to move that around, because the question is, when you move that around or when you do something with it, would you lose the information, the insecurity which arises out of it? And it's quite understandable. So one of the good things, Anne, is that we have a team in our facilities. We have a team of experts who have done this. This is what they do for a living. They've been around for 30, 35 years doing this. So typically, let's say a facility which is about 1 million square feet, we would have our teams go there and literally take over the entire document storage room and be able to scan it. Either we take the documents to a scan center and scan it. In some instances where it's a high security location, could be a defense location, or could be some research facility, we could even have local scanners installed there, and we would scan all of the information and upload that to the cloud. Once it's gone onto the cloud, then entire processing is done on the cloud, in technology environment. Our people don't have to be involved. At that stage, typically what our people will ask is, here's all the scanned drawings, here's all your hard copies, which do you want to keep, which do you want to actually shred? We find most of the time customers shred about 70–80% of the information. There's some information they'll say we like to keep it, and they'll send that to the storage room. But that's typically what happens. And in a 1 million square feet facility, you're looking at maybe 2 weeks, depending on how old the building is. If the building is 10 years old, then it's a piece of cake. Generally, those drawings are relatively new, they are fresh, and they're easier to scan and read. Now, on the other hand, if this building happens to be 80 years old, you probably have very old drawings, and they're probably what you call bleached or torn, or dog-eared, whatever you may want to call it. It takes more time to physically scan them. Once it's scanned, however old the drawing is, the AI does all the work of really identifying the information on the drawing and extracts that information and puts it in the cloud. And then it's our software engineers who, organize it and push it into the app.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to kind of continue down this implementation path because we got another question about the security of the data. And sir, you had just mentioned how the data resides in the cloud, so that answered the first part of it. But the question is really about security of the data. I imagine you get that question often. Can you talk a little bit about that? And does the ARC team interface with the organization's IT department as a matter of course, or what's your experience with that?
Absolutely. This question comes up all the time, and understandably so. And especially depending on what type of organization. In some instances, we work with healthcare facilities, obviously, large healthcare customer base we have, because of the regulations around healthcare, that's obviously very critical. And then we also work with defense organizations, their information is very critical. My generic answer to storing information on the cloud, once upon a time, there were some issues, there was no question, there were some concerns about the security, but increasingly the security has become better and better over a period of time. Now it has come to a stage, and our audience should be able to relate to this. For example, banks now have literally all the transactions on a mobile software, whether you are using Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, you name it. Almost every bank, you can do your banking transactions, transacting money, sending money, etc. I mean, just not banks, but there are other institutions who can do this for you. Non-banking institution can actually provide services for transfer of money. It used to be only Western Union, but you could use Venmo, or you could use PayPal. You can use a whole lot of technology companies to do that. So information, whether it is related to, for example, your healthcare information, I can log on and get all of my personal medical information on an app, which actually is stored on the cloud. So the issue with regard to security has been largely resolved, and it's very secure. The banking regulation, if you're servicing a banking institution, then we have to follow banking regulations. If you are servicing a healthcare institution, then we need to, meet those regulations. There are certifications for all that, and we meet with those. We have those certifications because it's important whether we store the information on an Amazon cloud, on a Google cloud, on an IBM cloud. All these certifications are available from these vendors as well. So yes, it is. The information is as secure as it can get in hard copy, and all those protections are easily available these days. And these are typically, when we install, we have to go through IT and security, and it has to pass master. Otherwise, we won't be allowed to help them.
Okay, thank you. And we do have time for, I'd say, one last question, and I'm going to kind of move a little bit to the actual use. Well, it's still implementation, but leading into use. You had talked about, but all of you on the call had talked about the various softwares, the different uses for different softwares, how there's those different silos. So can you just briefly talk about the ARC Facilities app? Can it connect? The question is, can this app connect to our existing software? I'll leave it at that. Can it connect to existing software? I imagine that means pulling data from other softwares that exist.
Sure. I mean, that's it very much depends on and what type of existing software you have. Like I said, in the CMMS space alone, there are 180 different companies. Some of these softwares which you're using in the CMMS world are as old as the fundamentals are as old as 50 years old. So they're on different platforms. Some of them are desktop platforms. Some of them are mobile platforms. Some of them have mobile interfaces, but they don't necessarily mean it's mobile first. But if there's any software solution which is new and which is mobile first, then we should have no trouble connecting with that software whatsoever. So it depends on the type of software you have. If it is related to a building management software, that is the management system, that is BMS, yes, those hardwares generally are connectable to the software we have. With regard to CMMS, it very much depends on what's the platform they are on. If they're mobile first and if they're open source, then we should be able to comfortably connect with that software. So depending on the type of software and what kind of information you want to be able to share. Does that make sense, Anne? I hope I explained it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And I do want to mention that we are out of time now, so I want to thank Suri, David, and Dennis for this discussion today. Thank you, gentlemen. Also, thank you to ARC Facilities for presenting the webinar. There on the screen, you'll see you can send an email to solutions@arcfacilities.com to the team there if you did have additional questions, and also check out a demo at that site up there, arcfacilities.com/request-demo. So thank you again, everyone, for attending. A recording of this webinar will be available online at facilityexecutive.com. And please look out for an email from the ARC Facilities team you'll receive, which will include a recording and a PDF of this webinar sent directly to you. Thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.